Hello, thank you so much for coming to the Sashiko Live. Once again, thank you so much for coming to the Sashiko Live streaming on Thursday night. Sorry, Sakura's hair is in my mouth. Let me check the audio first. Just a second. Sakura, what? It's weird. Sakura's hair is inside of my mouth. So this is the live streaming where I talk about Sashiko while doing the Sashiko stitching. It is not a lecture, not a tutorials. So I'm not going to answer the technical questions to be fair with everybody else. Instead, I will answer the questions about culture, stories, around Sashiko. I don't have any announcement today. Well, I sometimes receive the questions about the coming workshop, in-person workshop. Interestingly, I do not have any planned in 2024. That's something I decided. I'm not saying I'm not gonna have it. If there's any opportunities, I would like to have it. But because I'm gonna go to Japan in November, it's kind of tight as well. So as of right now, there's no workshop coming up in 2024, but there are some coming up in 2025, and all of the informations are. I summarized all of the informations, so if you could check the description area, that'd be great. That being said, I will try to also organize the Japan Sashiko Tour in 2025. I said it last week, and then I haven't prepared the. Well, the website is prepared. The information is not. I mean, I haven't really decided when exactly, so I will make decisions soon or later. So if you are interested to that, there's a Google form, and there's no obligations, no strings attached. I just want to make sure that how many people are interested in that, and I would like to make a optimized decision for that. So those are the announcement, and today I will do, of course, Sashiko stitching. At the same time, at some point I will come back from the previous live streaming. I got a pretty good numbers of comment in the last previous live streaming. So I may introduce that. At the same time, I would like to move on to some other topics if you have any. Okay. And lastly, I would like to make sure that I can finish the previous the project I have started. All right, I will change the camera. Beep, beep. So since last week, I have been doing this, but it is true that I gotta finish this one too. So the whole purpose of this was to make this much space open. When I decided to stop stitching when this become just square. So this is, technically speaking, this is not a square, so I may edit. But at the same time, it's not really the perfect square, so I don't know about that. This is done. This is kind of done. Done, done, done. Done, done. Actually, almost everywhere is done. So, well, I probably don't have to do that. Yeah, I may not have to do that. Well, I'll just think about it a little later. Chasing the thread, thank you. Curious what everyone else is working on. I have been dyeing thread and working on stitching on some jeans. That's something you might. Let's wait for that. And Joyce is making jeans as well as making hanafkin. There's so many projects not a project, so many ideas simultaneously going on. It's like I wouldn't call it bad habit. It's like a habit that I cannot only focus on one thing. Kind of almost always. Almost always have something else going on. Yeah. I have been making kitchen towels out of upcycled cloth napkin with the Hanazashi pattern. I have a jean jacket and I am stitching on the back of it. That's good. Everybody's stitching. That's what makes this live streaming sort of meaningful, for that matter. When I decided to have this live streaming, I had one hope, and that hope is still here, which is to make or create and sustain and preserve a place for somebody. And that somebody is anybody who is watching this. And there's a word for that, Japanese word for that is called ibasho. Ibasho can be really, I don't have the exact translation for that, but it's a place for you to be. When I say I have ibasho, which means I have somewhere that I can belong to, and that's a very good way to avoid kind of loneliness, for that matter, or solitude. I don't know which word is good, but for example, in Japanese live streaming, because I have been doing that for last 7, 8 years or so. No, not 8 years, but I have been very, very long time, and I did not stop doing it in the middle. It's quite recent that I regularly offer the live streaming in English. Before that, it was more like irregular. In Japanese live streaming, I've been doing that for like again 7 years or so, very systematically, very every week. Sometimes more often than every week. So I hope that Japanese live streaming is also becoming the ibasho to them. And it's kind of interesting that I know them, so if they don't show up for one time, probably I'm not gonna say anything. Everybody's pretty busy. But if they don't show up for like several weeks, I would probably call them. I mean, ask them personally what's going on, or the viewers, the audience can contact each other what is going on. So those are kind of like a social safety net. Ibasho can be like a safety net for those who, somebody might be living by themselves. Somebody may not have those system to find out those things. So the principle, like very core essence, very original scenery of Sashiko was like that. It was more like the community based. So right now it's all over the internet, and there's a limitation because of the internet. At the same time, it doesn't have to be one specific area. It can be, anywhere in the world. So my goal is to make that ibasho, preserve it, and make it sustainable somehow. So I skipped several questions, sorry. So I am bookbinder, and I have been trying to incorporate Sashiko into the design of the spines. I just wanted to combine two things that I enjoy. I had somebody who took my workshop who has been doing the book binding. It should be fun. I don't know how exactly because I don't know how and what book binding requires. But that sounds fun. I keep seeing this in my eyes. So I might move to this one a little later. Ugh. Then I have to go and get the thread, but it may be a good idea to finish it right now. My yarn shop has a knit night every Wednesday evening, and our group is like that. Some people older, and this is one of the few events they have in a week. And for the younger people, many work from home, and it's also an opportunity for them to be with people. Yeah, so that's something. Unfortunately, I don't have a physical location to make it public. So I think the Jocelyn's store is like a gem of the community. It's kind of rare to have that, and it's very fortunate for those who live close um, to that kind of physical place. Um, but yeah, that's the idea. And since I cannot offer it physically, I am just offering on the internet. And I think that's how crafting was developed and can be preserved. You know, when I say that, people kind of start making fun of it. But so I don't want you to make fun of me. I'm just saying you can make fun of me. But I want to be like your grandma for that matter. So this is like you imagine that you're visiting your grandma's house, and then your grandma happened to be able to do sashiko, and you're watching it to do that. So don't call me grandma though. Um, I still have a 9 years old daughter, so it's a little too early to be a grandma, or even grandpa for that matter. But that's kind of the idea of it, and that's probably the biggest reason that I keep saying, please learn the core and essence of Sashiko that I teach. And especially for those who are very much looking for the answers to the Sashiko. As you can tell, I am reading, stitching, talking simultaneously. And this is my second language. I am not focusing on the stitching almost at all. If I focus on this stitching, let's say if I have to make a very exact size, I won't be able to talk this much or even read. So the principle is to be able to talk, not to focus. We are so busy to focus on something, and we can do stitching all along. Can you explain what's the loops or loose thread are for? There we go. That's the question I often get. So please go to my website, Upcycle Stitches, and then type Y loops. You get an answer for that. So that's the kind of technical question, but I do have the answers on my website. Chasing a thread. Yes, I used to go to a group for almost 7 years in Berkeley. We call it Stitch, and yeah, there we go. That's pretty much same as everywhere. Like across the culture. Mostly knitting, but we also did embroidery or crochet. I love that Jocelyn's I'm in a smaller group of grains of the community center that gets together to sew once a week. It's a little too much. Sorry. I gotta stop. But yeah, so that's kind of like a key. So I don't want anybody to, how can I say, romanticize? It is going to be romanticized and it has been quite romanticized, but it's not that kind of thing. That's why I really need to talk about the cultural aspect of this practice, because it's not only about me, for that matter. I had a store, I had a Sashiko business, and there were many, many people in that associated or connected to that activities. And that defines my Sashiko. Unfortunately, the Sashiko is not introduced right now in English at all, almost at all. And by others defining what Sashiko is without acknowledging those stories, Sashiko will become something else completely. And some advise me that your Sashiko is Japanese Sashiko, and others are kind of, inspire Sashiko or something. But it's kind of sad and shitty, for that matter, to call my culture Japanese Sashiko. It is, Sashiko itself is Japanese already, so I sometimes use that word. At the same time, it's not my best intention. One day I hope that when they hear the word Sashiko, they imagine the Japanese culture behind it. Right now, probably a majority of the people probably don't know where it comes from at this moment. That's what trend does. Some people kind of introduce Sashiko as the ancient technique. It's not ancient technique. It's just the needlework. But that's the marketing part of that. But it's a difference. There's a big difference because of the culture behind it. I have really fond memories of learning embroidery from grandma. Yeah, so that's something. It doesn't have to be like a needlework. It can be anything, like cooking, doing the artwork. Probably if it's like a father-son thing. I'm not talking about like gender difference, but then it's more like image-wise. It can be car maintenance, how to change the oil, how to change the spark plug and such, and what else. We lived in a society where we did not need that much money. So in this society, we have to make money. That's something we have to all agree. That's because that money can kind of bypass the luck, the fact that we don't have the community around, or even the family around. We can purchase those services, we can purchase it, and therefore we need money. And since I'm doing this outside of Japan and I don't have family here, and it takes a lot of support, I need a lot of help for that. Therefore, I need some money to make it happen. But in the original scenery, the connection was much more important. Well, yeah. Grandma will be surprised if you pay to see if you learn Sashiko from them. So what I'm doing is kind of both. Live streaming is like being grammar, but I wanna be the efficient teacher who can teach systematically. Grammar doesn't usually teach systematically, so I'm doing both. But the idea itself is pretty similar. So I never had a systematic lectures or hands-on training. All I teach in the online class or in-person workshop is fairly recent. I kind of developed that based on the memories that I couldn't. I mean, I could do it when I realized myself, but there were moments of the difficulties because my hand changed over time. So that's kind of the origin of that. Just a second. Okay, so this color is good. This color is good. Okay. One color is good. I have leaving links to the channel on my denim upcycle group when people post stuff saying it is borrow. I really appreciate it. We've been doing that, but yeah, it is kind of too late for that. I mean, there is nothing too late, but at the same time, many people think or misunderstand what Sashiko boards are. I think I've been speaking up for the last 6 years, but you know, my words are not that strong, unfortunately. It takes time. Saying Japanese Sashiko include that there are other Sashiko with different origin, which just isn't the case. And there are many kinds of Sashiko within Japan, and that's why I keep saying this is our Sashiko, which means there are many other Sashikos. But as it's Japanese word, when we define Japanese Sashiko, it sounds like there's only one Sashiko in Japan, right? It's kind of implied what it sounds like. And I would like to avoid that. There are many, 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 many kinds. And I'm very much qualified to teach one type of Sashiko. So others are very, very different. Woodworking with my grandfather is a great memory. See, so I have a pretty good my grandfather was very, very strict, but um, my mother, Keiko's father, my grandfather from my mother's side of the grandfather, he was quite talented person, although he wasn't really wealthy person, but he was a hobby person. He had a lot of hobbies. Once he made a koi fish. He was raising the koi fish for the, trade. And of course, I dropped into the pond, and that's why I don't really like fish much. It's pretty traumatic. And in my childhood, I was making miso. I think I can do that even now. I need a proper equipment, which I don't know even if I can get it. But my grandpa used to make that, so we had a homemade miso, which we use pretty much every day for the breakfast. Not only breakfast, pretty much all the meals. So it's quite fun memories. And with the internet, it's really sad that I cannot pass those things to my daughter. But that's not something the parents can force to the kids. It's gonna be a bad memory then to the kids. Like, for example, Sashiko had been very, very, very bad memories. I did not want to do it. On the other hand, making miso, cooking, woodworking, those memories are very, very good. And I have it as like enjoyable memories. So I hope that my daughter, and pretty much all the kids for that matter, find those things in their lives. Memory is good. He taught what he knew all his grandkids, regardless of gender rules. Ideas. That's awesome. Yeah, so my grandmother, my grandmother was like that too. I was very suffering from the gender rules because it's stitching, right? It's stitching, and it was not something that boys was supposed to, not was supposed to. It was not the boys' things to do. In 80s and 90s. I'm not saying right now it's like that. I know I don't believe in that, but it was a strong gender rules back then. So is cooking for that matter. But my grandmother taught me, my mother's side of grandmother taught me how to do that. She let me use the very big knife when I was a child, and I don't know how many times I cut myself, but that helps. I can cook. I don't eat out almost at all. This year twice or three times, and no single eating out in this town. I just went out when I had a workshop opportunities simply because it's kind of arrogant to say, but my cooking is probably better than the other places eating out. So, and of course, it's much more economical, and I wish I had those extra money, but I have a little different priorities, so I don't go out much. A question on thread. I understand the importance of using cotton thread now, but during the Edo period, what was the thread originally? Or did the sumptuary laws not allow to cotton thread? Um, I don't know who said that cotton thread is the important. I don't. Well, in fact, as the result, cotton thread is important, but not all cotton thread is good for Sashiko for that matter. Cotton thread is not gonna define the good thread or not. The good thread is going to be defined by what is the purpose of your Sashiko and how well the purpose of one Sashiko, let's say purpose of my Sashiko, will define what is the good Sashiko for this. And if the goal is to just make the Sashiko looks good from artistic perspective, like embroidery, then I don't know if it's called Sashiko or not. So it's okay to use any thread. There were some times that my even family business used the silk thread for that purpose, and they call it Sashiko, so it's perfectly fine to call that Sashiko, I guess. But it's the twist. What is the key of the Sashiko thread is not the thickness or material, it's the twist. And unfortunately, the twist of this Sashiko thread I'm using, I cannot find other places at this moment. There are similar things, but I cannot speak on behalf of the others who. I have an alternative. I can substitute. I can offer some substitution, but I cannot be as confident as this thread. when one uses this thread, I can say, well, if it doesn't happen, it's not because of the thread. So if you take when you take my workshop, there's gonna be the topic of how to not to make knot, as I don't make knot. And if it does not work after my workshop, and if they're using this thread, then I have to. It's my responsibility to fix that. There gotta be something's going on, and those cases happen. That case never happened to me after teaching for 5-6 years. Nobody complained that at this moment. There might be complaints, but in that case, I may ask them to take photos, and I will find out. I will locate the reason or cause of that. But because I've been using this thread for a long time, I know that this is gonna work out. Other thread, there are a few threads that I keep using, but I cannot speak on behalf of them with that confident. Sorry, it's so long, so much talking to make one answer. Sorry about that. So the current thread does not have to be all the answers. It can be other materials, but the twist is important. That being said, our Sashiko had a luxury to use the current thread already, and in Edo period, people could use some cotton thread as well as the fabric. When we go back to before that, let's say before the Edo period, we really don't know when exactly the Sashiko started. But Sashiko is pretty famous, pretty common on the northern part of Japan and also the Japan Sea coast. That's because of the ship. That was like a road or path for the commodity exchange transaction. English is not coming out, but they kind of exchanged items like a business transactions. And some people ship the cotton fabric from the Kyoto area to the northern part of Japan. They probably imported, kind of like, brought the wood or other materials. And that's why they kind of mix the culture there. There's a little interaction there, and they mix the culture, so the Sashiko kind of spread from one place to another place. It's kind of history, this kind of history the same. But because Japan is surrounded by oceans, they had a very good time to keep it ourselves. They were mixing it, but they were mixing it within the Japanese culture, which can be good and bad simultaneously, because, without including other culture, it can be quite strange. So the Japanese culture you see are quite interesting. And there's a reason for that. Yeah, it's the trade route. It's probably like a Silk Road from Turkey to China. Don't ask me about history too much. And so we speaking of our Sashiko, we had the cotton thread in the original scenery. Original practice, they had a cotton thread. Their age, they were twisting the thread with their hands. I do not want to go back to that age. That's why I am really much saying, like, I have to preserve this thread at all costs, because I don't want to go back to that age. That might be the end of my Sashiko. If I have to twist my thread by myself, that is really the end of. I might stop doing it. Like, I like it, but I'm too spoiled to do that. So that sorry, I cannot say that word. Sumptuary laws means probably, if I understand it correctly, that's the law that the government, Tokugawa Bakufu, prohibited the peasant or ordinary people to use something fancy. Like they could not use the red color, like something fancy, something colorful. That's the reason that we have a lot of kind of dark color natural dye, indigo, kakishibu, Japanese persimmon tanning, also mud. They are indigo is blue, kakishibu is sort of gold, ochre, little dark grayish, and then mud is darkish. So even in that time, it's not throughout the 400 years. It's one part of the history. There were 15 shoguns, 15 governors, not governors. Well, 15 shogun who governed that Japan for 400 years. I don't remember which one exactly, but one of them decided to do that. So, and I don't think they prohibited the thread. I mean, cotton was quite popular back then already. Silk was probably prohibited. I have to look into that, but I only know about the color. I don't know about the silk, but probably yes. So there's another fabric, different kind of fabric called chirimen. What is the chirimen in English? It's probably crepe. I don't know if the crepe is the fabric, but there are some like a shiny fabric, and those were prohibited as well, but not sashiko. I don't think sashiko was never prohibited. At the same time, as people decided to discontinue sashiko at many places when they became wealthier. But I don't think there are any places that prohibited sashikos for that. This one I might be wrong. I don't know exactly. You know, people did not want to stitch, so if they can move to something else, you know, they would do. It's very recent that, I mean, recent is like 40 years, 50 years, but it's pretty recent that we Japanese decided to do that intentionally. There was out of necessity, which is about 200 years or so, probably about 200 years, I would say. And after that, many sashiko got discontinued. We Japanese chose to not to pass it down to the next generation because they did not need to do that. And there was some revival, including my family. And that's the time that they chose to revive or preserve this practice. Now, the sashiko got out of Japan. Now, kind of, I am asking to many non-Japanese people or somebody who can speak English to look at the origin so we can preserve it again. It's kind of, I don't want to go back to that time to revive that. Interesting. I'll have to take a look. Please educate me if I'm wrong. I'm not the historian for that. I read. What do I read? Those are the information that I read many years ago, so it can be wrong. But I'm not. What I talk about within the Sashiko is truth, but everything else can be not a fake. I'm not lying intentionally. It can be inaccurate. But when I say something inaccurate, I say please look up by yourself. I'm also gonna have to go down the rabbit hole and learn some Japanese history. It is pretty fun. That 400 years did a lot of things to Japanese mindset. I mean, speaking of Japanese history, starting from the beginning, it's kind of messed up. I'm proud of that. At the same time, it's quite messed up. And this may be a wrong statement, so I have this can be examined, this can be studied, or this can be discussed with more people with more knowledge. But in my understanding, Japan is the only country or nation that huh? I was gonna say that has never been invaded, but wait, US is also the country got not invaded before? Well, Japan had a very unique culture because of the character of the island, and also they shut down the trade. They they isolate their nation for 400 years. Yeah, that messed up the culture. I mean, not a messed up. Well, kind of. But that developed a lot of interesting culture. Yokai lore is probably a good. I don't know why his books are translated into English so much. But yeah,白木屋子、京極夏彦、夏彦京極図、白子屋、百鬼夜行、何白子って、百鬼夜行 Probably that's the book for that. It's a very good book to kind of see the inside of Japanese culture. Um, if you have a chance to look at him, look at his photos. I think he's one of the yokai, which is the non-human thing. He doesn't look like his age at all. He does not age. So would you mind adding the book to the description? That's probably probably the book you're reading now? No? I will if I don't forget. If I forget, I'm sorry. It's the yokai lore is called Byakyako. I think. There are not that many Japanese books translated into English. So if it's published by Natsuhiko Kyogoku, I think that's the only one book it's not only one book, it's like a 10,000 pages if you're gonna read through. Can be more. That's a series of this thick book. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's written by American. Okay, sorry. Then it's a little different thing. I'll write it down on the comments section right now, so I don't forget. Hyakiyako. I don't know if it's the right spell. Kyogoku Natsuhiko. I believe that this book was translated into English, and that was quite. I did not read through, but my wife was reading it, and she enjoyed it. So I read it in Japanese. Long time ago, though. Wow, I was probably in high school, 20 something years ago. I'd much rather go to information from Japanese source. It is really, I appreciate that, but at the same time, that's some, some comment that I receive saying that they would like to learn somebody Japanese because it's Japanese culture. But it's not like all the non-Japanese author or teachers are bad or even not good. There are many teachers or author who are non-Japanese who share, teach, write about Japanese culture. So I don't know if it's a good idea to judge the book or contents based on the name for that matter. Like, even if they have a non-Japanese name, that might be a good idea. At the same time, this can be a quite precaution to myself as well. But being Japanese itself is not gonna be a qualification to teach as well. It will help, but like being Japanese itself is not going to be a good qualification to be the teacher in specific field. You cannot. It's a completely different story to be able to speak English and to make nice pizza. So it's a completely different story. It's difficult. Like, we tend to value the name or face behind it. So it's kind of difficult to differentiate one Japanese author to another Japanese author, which has more experience or credibility to teach or not. So it is quite. We don't know. So it requires a lot of research, a lot of try and error. But once you kind of start trying, you probably will find the best one for you. I really like these stories, even if some really are scary. Yeah, scary is good. Scary is good. Not to crap on Americans, they just sometimes don't present all the context. Well, it's the same as Japanese too. It really depends on who. So, if you are listening to this live streaming, I sometimes sounds like to discussing the dualism, but as the kind of baseline, please make sure to understand that my goal is to get out of that dualism. Yes or no, A or B. I do not talk like that. I do not want to talk like that. Because I'm using English right now, it sounds like it, but the whole purpose is that there is something in between. So when I say that Sashiko taught in English is not wrong, but insufficient, it sounds like that I'm criticizing all of the Sashiko teachers or authors written in doing in English. I am not saying all of them. They are good people, not good people. They are those who are publishing or writing or doing some good stuff. There are many Sashiko artisans or artists with 30, 40, 50 years experience in the US or in, I don't know, wherever, but they exist. So Japanese or non-Japanese are not the first or the only criteria to make a decision or judgment. It goes to the same thing. Being able to speak Japanese or living in Japan itself is very one big advantage to go to the core and essence very quickly because they can speak the language. Many teachers are in Japan, so there are more opportunity to learn, but that does not make them the master or teacher. What makes them master or teacher is the sense of responsibility. That's what I really believe in that. If they are responsible for what they're teaching, I think that's a good place to call them a teacher. A master is a little bit different, but teacher-wise or professional teaching in the professions, not like teaching as the guide, that's a completely different story. So if you're a teacher as the guide of other things, please keep guiding, and please keep spreading the good informations so that many people can reach to as many other cultures as possible. But when one teach one topic as the expert, then what makes that teacher as the qualified or not is the level of commitment and sense of responsibility. Of course, the skills are important, knowledge is important, experience is important, but it never will be enough. I don't think I am qualified to teach if when we kind of discussed my experience and skills. There are many other people who should be teaching right now in Japan. I will take the Japan tour to those teachers or those masters, who do not wish to teach in public much. But one thing I can say is that I am willing to take full responsibility on what I teach. Well, otherwise I wouldn't be teaching. I'm really teaching with the commitment and responsibility. I will be here even 30 years from now, as long as I'm alive. But as long as I'm alive, I will be teaching the same thing, and I won't change it. So I hope it kind of makes sense. So level of commitment is very important to me. But the level of commitment and the sense of responsibilities are not gonna be explained by just a word. Let's say if one says that I have a lot of commitment and I have so much responsibility, I carry so much responsibility to this practice, it doesn't mean anything. It almost means nothing, I guess. Depends on what they do. Depends on what they do is gonna explain the levels of commitment as well as the sense of responsibility. So that's a probably good way to kind of choose who you learn from. Because especially there are so many resources right now. That's another reason that I show my face on the YouTube. I used to not to show my face, but after I became the teacher, I kind of started deciding, well, if I'm gonna teach something, I have to show. That's a sign of commitment. It's probably doable to not to show my face, but anonymity. No, I don't want to be anonymous because anonymous people can do a lot of irresponsible things. So, whew, sorry, I missed the comment. Gurukok. Gurukok, if you are ever in Los Angeles, the LA County Museum of Art Japanese Pavilion is wonderful. I think it's Google, right? But we Google if you are ever in LA County Museum of Japanese Pavilion is wonderful. Yeah, that'd be great to visit. Many people from West Coast on this live streaming. It's kind of late for the East Coast. I closed it, so. Sue, thank you for the comment. Yes, being able to do something well and being able to teach it are two different skill set. Some people have both, but not all masters make good teachers. Yeah, I 100% agree with you. For that matter, I am more like the teacher's side, especially in the confident wise. I don't consider myself as a good Sashiko artisan. So in last 6 years, in order to teach in different language to different culture people is quite challenging. So I think I am. It's not very Japanese things to say, but I think I am pretty confident as the teacher. Except for the traditional Japanese method where the students just watch the masters work for 10 years. Yeah, that's very true. And we have to kind of discuss about the definition of teaching then. That's, in my understanding of the word and those definitions, that's probably not teaching. Teaching requires a little bit of explanation, I guess. No? Like it means zero explanation. Those the way Japanese people pass down the culture. We call them shokunin, which is kind of rough translation is artisan, or artisan is probably the word for that. But shokunin is kind of special word that we don't have the kind of the English translation. There are many definitions of shokunin, and that can be defined as a skilled person focusing on one specific. Let's say that if one is focusing on doing sashiko for many years, then that person can be considered as shokunin. Skill set is quite like it's must have to begin with. But while talking to other Japanese people, shokunin cannot be just defined by the skill set. There gotta be something else because it feels something is missing. So does everybody qualify to be the shokunin if they have a good skill set? That's kind of a good question to ask. And after this, it's my own definition. But shokunin is a person who decided to commit their entire life into one practice. So even without the skill set of the mastering skill set, if they decided to, let's say shoemaking is, if the person decided to commit their entire life in shoemaking, that person can be the the shokunin. And shokunin doesn't change their field that easily. So let's say that those sushi shokunin today will not be the ramen shokunin tomorrow. It doesn't change like that. That commitment is quite. Well, today's title should be the commitment. I'm probably talking about the importance of commitment. So if one is teaching Sashiko in any other language, when I can feel the commitment, I probably will respect it. I will probably ask to be kind of friend for that matter. When I don't see the commitment, I get a little annoyed. And it's gonna escalate from there, but so many there's no commitment required or necessary for those who just want to enjoy Sashiko. You don't, like, if you are not teaching, you really don't need a commitment at all. Or if you're just teaching Sashiko as the guide to others, as a part of the textile or other bigger pictures, Sashiko as the Japanese culture, or Sashiko as the textile art, Sashiko as the something else, that's perfectly fine. But if they're teaching the Sashiko, as if they are saying like the master or expert, then that commitment will play like extremely important roles. It's probably not a good English, but I don't want anybody half-assed to call themselves an expert. I think it's the universal concept. And then some people may ask, well, what does half-ass definition? Well, it depends on the people, but I think they are. Some of them are. And they shouldn't. Well, I'm gonna stop bitching about it. Oops. I have to apologize. I kind of make rules that I don't swear in this live streaming because of the word half a ish. I let my guard down. Sorry. I apologize. Swear word. I do use those words in the actual life, but then other things kicks in, so I have to be kind of careful. You don't want me to talk like Cartman from the South Park or Michael Scott from The Office. I'm a big fan of those people. Big fan. If I can see the Cartman in real life, I will just jump for that. Same as Michael Scott, or I actually went to the lecture from the Dwight. I don't even know his real name. He probably didn't like to be called Dwight, so that's kind of sad, but for me, Dwight is Dwight. I hope that I can see the person like Dwight in my life at some point. I mean, I don't want to probably see it, but I think as creative, we are no stranger to four-letter word. Yo. I'm just trying my best. That's probably my respect to this language. It's easier to use that language to express my feeling, but that kind of like as the foreigner, I am a foreigner to this culture, and as non-English second ESL person, English as a second language person, I shouldn't kind of I shouldn't excuse myself from learning new word by using the four-letter word. When I want to say F word, I would like to look for the word that I can use to describe what I meant in those four-letter word. Yay. I don't think you can expect people in the English-speaking world to adopt the shokunin mindset, or if you do expect it, you are setting yourself up for the disappointment. Yes, and ay. That's kind of summary. Yeah, that's the summary of my suffering. But I lost my word, yo. Yeah, that's the summary. But I don't want to give up on that, and I am getting it. I am getting that, and it's kind of like a dying. It's very old faucet style mindset. I don't think Japanese are ready for that too. Japanese are not gonna even carry that mindset anymore. They don't really commit anything, and they want the flexibility. Even I wanted to have a flexibility when I was in 20s. It's very recent that I decided to commit it. So, well, it's a two different thing. Expecting that to myself and talking about it, speaking up about it with kind of knowing that it might not happen, but it's okay to talk about it. I hope that this world can see the difference between that. So I'm not saying like all teaching is bad, but it's just the level of commitment. And again, teaching has two kinds. There are two kinds of teaching. And in most cases, one teaching is fine because if you are teaching as the guide, if you do not advertise yourself as the expert of Sashiko, it usually is not gonna be a problem. It's like a school teachers. And school teachers has a very wide range of the informations and knowledge and skill so that the kids can learn many other things to find what they really want to pursue. So for that teachers, I want them to kind of use the word Sashiko as much as they can. That might open up the possibility. When I criticize the teachers, it's usually the teachers with professions such as professors. Like the math professor has to be able to do the calculus, right? I mean, I hope there is no single math professor who teach math to the college kids who cannot do the calculus well. That's probably that's a lack of commitment. If there are, I'm sorry, that's my lack of information. That I don't know those things. But in my understanding, that's, then I wonder what they teach in the mathematics field. But anyway, it's after 10 o'clock, so I will start wrapping up. So this one, actually, I'm gonna turn this off. This one, I'm gonna call it, this is the end of it. I'm not gonna touch it anymore. Do I like it? I don't know. Let's see. Do I like it? I will wait to see if I like it or not. But so the goal was to leave some square blank and kept stitching until that becomes the blank. Please, please, please don't ask me why I use these colors because I was not thinking. And at this moment, I'm not that big fan of it. But let's see how I change that. It has to be it has to be like that, in the days. This is a very, very known Sashiko style. What I did was Sashiko, and I consider it Sashiko, but very much different from the Sashiko we talk about. This one is the Sashiko we talk about. So starting from next week, I will continue doing this. This is the kind of assignment, not assignment, but the homework. Homework and assignments are the same thing. Similar thing. So I take my friends to Japan in November, and this is part of the kind of project we're doing together, and I want to be, and I should be part of it. So, well. All right. I should be able to come back next week at the same time at 9 o'clock Eastern Time on Thursday. And I do not have any workshop planned for 2024 anymore, so I should be able to keep coming. No cancel, no change of the plan at this moment, unless I get some sick or something like that. But usually it should be fine. So I hope I will see you next Thursday. If you're watching this as the archive, please leave the comments if you have any questions. If not, I will see you on next week. I hope you have a good night. Bye bye. Sorry. If you can put the like button, that would help my channel to keep the channel health. There's always one negative or two negative bad marks. There are somebody who really likes me, so to balance it out, please help me to get a good button. All right, thank you so much. Have a good day. Not a good day, have a good night. Bye.